Alright guys, here comes part 3 of our Civil War lesson videos. Today we're going to kind of talk about the end of the Civil War, the legacy of the Civil War, if you will. Next class we'll move into what came out of the Civil War with freedom of slavery and etc., etc. Alright, so halfway through the Civil War, more towards the third quarter of it, Lincoln and the Union Army are going to adopt a plan of what is called total war. Total war is this idea that you are not only fighting the troops, the opposing force on the other side, the Confederate soldiers, but you are fighting all of the Confederacy, whether that be civilians, whether that be livestock, animals, whatever. The reason for that is that every person could not only be a soldier, but every person could be a supply. All right, every item could be a supply. Animals are food. Civilians can make products for soldiers. So they take on this idea of total war, in which Lincoln advises Grant to attack and attack again, just continue to go. This is going to produce huge casualties, huge numbers of deaths and amputees, and Lincoln, I don't want to say is okay with this, but understands this and accepts this on the grounds that the Union has so many more people, all right, capable of fighting. Not that they're necessarily trained, but if, 100 people die, he can replace it with 200. So Lincoln and the Union have mass numbers advantages in comparison to the Confederacy. Okay. One of the things that's going to best kind of point this out is what's called the Battle of Wilderness near Fredericksburg, Virginia. This is going to be one of the first times that Lincoln is going to send Grant in to have direct conflict with General Lee. Okay. So Grant is going to meet Lee in this heavily wooded area in Virginia, and Grant is going to tell the troops that there is no turning back. They're to push forward no matter what. If they don't get shot, on the way in, if they try to retreat, they'll be shot at by their own army. So they have to stay in there and fight Lee no matter what. It's brutal. There are really high casualty numbers, which we'll go over in a minute, made much worse by the fact that somebody starts a fire in this wooded area and a lot of people burn during the Battle of the Wilderness. Okay, so Grant is going to lose roughly 65,000 men in this one battle. Lee is going to lose roughly 35,000 men. The weird part about that is that is worse for Lee and the Confederates, even though they lost just about half of what Grant and the Union lost, because Lee and the Confederates have a finite number of people. They cannot replace these soldiers, whereas the Union, as terrible as it is to say, they have the ability to continually replace these men. So losing 65,000 is not as big of a deal as losing 35,000 in the South. At the same time, there's another general named William Tecumseh Sherman who is instructed to head to Atlanta. He kind of goes rogue and does whatever he wants on the way down there. Grant's aware of it. Lincoln is not fully aware of it. But Sherman is going to march to Atlanta. On his way there, he is going to burn a lot of things. He's going to destroy farms. He's going to destroy crops. He's going to destroy animals. They're going to kill things like cows and hogs and chickens. He's going to instruct his men to live off the land. They abandon their supply lines, so the only way these guys have to survive is to take and destroy and kill whatever they find. And they do. This becomes known as the March to the Sea, Sherman's March to the Sea, and the burning of Atlanta. He burns the city of Atlanta to the ground, particularly the railroad hub, and begins destroying and setting fire to entire towns throughout Georgia. One of the interesting things is one of the oldest towns in the United States today, Savannah, Georgia, he leaves it alone as a Christmas present. Says it's too beautiful to burn. So that's why today, if you look at that city, it still looks like it's Civil War era, pre-Civil War era, and untouched. All right. So after he reaches the sea, after he reaches Savannah, Georgia, Sherman and his army are going to hook north and head up through South Carolina. On his march north through Georgia and South Carolina, Sherman is going to begin freeing slaves, about 25,000 of them, and the majority of them are going to join Sherman's march. They're going to pick up weapons and join the Union Army on the way north, okay? It's kind of seen of a way of getting their freedom and fighting back, okay? When he hits South Carolina, he wreaks even more destruction, burning entire towns at this point to the ground. So it becomes even more devastating in South Carolina. As the war's getting close to an end, Sherman reaches the border of North Carolina, okay? He actually leaves North Carolina alone. There's a few reasons for this. One, he realizes the war's coming to an end, and, there's no reason to anger everybody right before the end of the war. Two, North Carolina is the last to secede, to leave the Union, right? They're also going to be one of the first to rejoin the Union. So instead of destroying things and burning things, Sherman is going to deliver food and supplies to people, kind of like a goodwill mission, if you will, through North Carolina. Towards the end of the Civil War, you have the election of 1864. Lincoln is going to barely win it. In fact, he's really concerned he's going to lose. He believes he's going to lose, and that's why he's pushing so hard to get the 13th Amendment. We'll get into that later on, passed before he is elected, all right? He's going to win. It's so close, though. He wins by 55%, okay, of the popular vote. Grant is going to begin approaching Richmond, the city of Richmond, which again is the capital, if you will, of the Confederacy. And Sherman is going to begin approaching Richmond from the south. So effectively, they're going to pinch Richmond in the middle. Okay. On April 2nd, Jefferson Davis is going to abandon Richmond, and he's going to set his own capital on fire. He figures if the Confederacy can't have it, then no one can have it. So he sets his own capital on fire. The Union troops take Richmond pretty easily, so the capital of the Confederacy falls into Union or Northern hands, and that's pretty much the official unofficial end of the war. General Lee and General Grant will meet at a place called Appomattox Courthouse, Virginia, in which they will discuss terms for General Lee and the Confederacy's surrender. Lincoln instructs Grant that the terms should be incredibly generous. Again, Lincoln knows he's going to have to put this country back together, Confederacy and Union, North and South. So he instructs Grant to let the Confederate military officers keep their weapons, to give them food to leave, to give them supplies enough to leave, and not to destroy them, basically. Again, because Lincoln believes he's going to have to work with them to try and put things back together. All in all, about 360,222 Union soldiers will die. 260,000 Confederate soldiers will die. The death toll is higher for Americans than all other U.S. wars combined. All right, so the amount of death in the Civil War is just massive. It's atrocious. Another 275,000 Union soldiers will be wounded or amputated. Another 260,000 Confederate soldiers will be wounded. So again, this is the bloodiest and most detrimental war in U.S. history, primarily because of the sheer body count and because the U.S. was fighting the U.S., okay? Brothers and sisters, cousins and cousins, brothers and brothers, people on the same families. So you had a mass amount of casualties. So when all's said and done, about one U.S. soldier will be killed or wounded for every 4 slaves that are freed. Okay, so there is a very high cost for the freedom of African Americans in the United States and throughout the entire area, whether it be north or south. Okay, all right, that is our lesson, our third lesson on the Civil War. Next lesson, we'll begin talking about the things that come out of the Civil War, okay? The amendments, the policy changes, and different practices. As usual, if you need anything, if you need any help, if you just need to talk, let me know. I will do my best to get back to you as soon as possible. Hope everybody's doing all right out there. See you later.